Let's talk about the number one misconception that people have about the brain and mental health. I'm Dr. Jeff Cumrow, and I work with people with autism, ADHD, dyslexia, autoimmunity, and more to help them build better connectivity between their brain, which helps improve their function and, with that, the quality of their life. So have you ever heard somebody say, that person has a chemical imbalance? It's used as a slight in most cases, but really, when we look at it, humans aren't designed to have chemical imbalances. And when we look at what the term chemical imbalance means, we see that it's an imbalance between the number of neurotransmitters. They either have too few or they have too many. And this is an oversimplification because neurotransmitters, like I said, they are meant to be imbalanced. And it also depends on the receptors as well. So it can't just be based off of one side of this. So when we say chemical imbalance, it's a very, very, very oversimplified term used to describe something. And I would almost guarantee if we were to look back at the beginning of it, it would be a marketing term. So like I said, humans are designed to have imbalanced brains. And when we look at this through an evolutionary perspective, we see, ants and reptiles and apes and cetaceans like dolphins and things like that. They all have imbalanced brains. And even evolutionary, like paleontology, going back to trilobites, it appears that they had imbalances in their brain as well. And these come with reasons. They are there for evolutionary purposes. Humans have very small birth canals. Since we walk upright, we have very small birth canals, and that makes us have very little brain development when we're born. We have to do most of our brain development outside in the world. Our environment plays a huge role in this. In the first couple of years, we use the right side of our brain to help keep us safe. The right side of the brain is more of an avoidance type thing. So we're avoiding unsafe situations. As we start to develop that, then we start to develop that left brain, that approach type behavior, so we can work together and have those social circles and things like that. So like I said, the environment plays a huge role in this, but it is designed like that for a reason, and we have these critical periods that we go through, and that is really where all of the growth and explosion in our abilities comes. Really, when we see a functional adult brain, we see the ability to pull from either area. When we look at autism, for example, we see superhuman abilities in memory or math or some of these other things, but we see struggles in social output. And when we have a healthy functional adult, we can pull from either side, or a kid as well. It doesn't matter if it's kid or adult. We can pull from either side to match the environment that we're in. We might still have those abilities in math, but we can also adapt and fit the needs that we need in the social circles as well. So the two sides of the brain are not equal. One side dominates over the other to have any kind of output. If we don't have a dominancy there, we don't have output. The basal ganglia is a very important example of this. When we have left-sided, direct pathway stimulation, we see output take place. When we have more hyperdirect or indirect pathway, more of the right-sided function, we see motion stopped. So depending on what your goals are, if you want to start motion, we need to get that left brain firing. If we need to stop motion, you want that right brain to fire. And this back and forth dynamic goes for all of the different functions in the brain. One side has to dominate over the other to get output though. And if you want to read more about this, Ian McGilchrist and Robert Melillo and Jerry Leisman, and there's a ton of authors that have a ton of not just books, but also research articles on this. So, the big thing to take out of this is the brain develops in a certain order. This is what allows us to have those childhood milestones. We know when kids are supposed to roll over. We know when they're supposed to crawl. We know when they're supposed to walk. We know when they're supposed to talk. And this is what allows it. Certain parts of the brain are supposed to turn on at certain times. This is how we determine what function is supposed to take place. If we do not see that, that's a problem. It's a skip step in there. If we don't have a step, then we have trouble developing those upper level functions. So we have to have the lower level. We have to have the body connected to the brain so we can get that sensation driven. Then we connect the brain back to the body. And if we're missing one of those steps, something there doesn't happen, it causes bottom up interference or top down interference. That interference is what leads to dysfunction. So no matter if we're talking about neurodevelopmental disorders or if we're talking about success psychology, if you're just struggling to get to that next level, these things are things that can get in the way. Autoimmunity is another great example. In most cases, autoimmunity doesn't develop until, a little later in life. And same thing. It's all this function that is getting blocked from taking place. So the brain is very adaptable. And not only can the brain, adapt when you're young, but it can adapt as we age. It's just like a muscle. If we know what areas are not working quite as well as they should be, we can stimulate that area and make it stronger and build that function up. And really, that's where I recommend everybody start, is get a good in-depth physical and neurological exam, a functional exam. Because if we look at the function, we know what's supposed to happen. If we look at how many squats you can do, or how many push-ups you can do, or verbal memory or visual memory, or eye movement testing or balance testing, or whatever it is, we could take these functional exams and we could put them together and see where you're struggling. And if we know where that struggle's at, if we know where that lack of function is, we can stimulate and drive that function to improve it and build it up. And if you are interested in this, if you want more information on it, click the link below. For now though, if you love this stuff, if you love talking about this stuff, I love talking about this stuff. And we're going to talk a lot about, the brain development. We're going to talk about developmental disorders. We're going to talk about success psychology. If you like this stuff, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you, and see you on the next video.